What's up, everybody? I'm Adam and you're watching the Model Aviator channel. This week we're reviewing the new XFly 40mm Twinliner. This is the first airliner that we've ever had and had an opportunity to get a lot of stick time on, and I have to say it surprised me quite a bit. Now technically this is our second one of these. I crashed the first one that Banana Hobby sent us, and they were kind enough to send us a pristine version so we could get some more flight footage and have a really nice one for these scenes here on the bench that you're watching now. So thank you to Banana for taking care of us. We'll show you the crash and explain how that happened in a bit. First, let's show you how this thing goes together. The assembly is pretty simple, doesn't take too terribly long, and the manual does a reasonably good job of explaining the steps in detail. The parts count is very low, makes things pretty simple. Your wing half assemblies have a square tab on one and a square peg on the other. You've also got some foam tabs to aid with alignment. You just slide those together, and then you'll have two plastic brackets. One has some faux nacoducts on it. That is the front bracket. You know you've got those in place properly when they fit flush and follow the contours of the bottom of the wing. Next, you'll turn your wing assembly over and carefully cut the zip ties to free up the wiring. You have an aileron and throttle Y harness as well as an ESC Y harness. Plug all those into place. Be mindful of the polarity on the aileron and throttle Y harness. There's a hole in the bottom of the fuse. You simply slide the wing and the wires through that hole. Easier to get the wires through there, by the way, when you take the hatch off and get it out of your way. And then you attach the wing with 4 screws. Next, you'll install the main gear assemblies. They're both exactly the same, so right or left makes no difference. You'll slide the tab into the hole in the bottom of the wing. The rest of the assembly snaps into place in a bracket, and you'll use a single screw per assembly to keep those from backing out. To install your horizontal stabs, you're going to want to put the push rods into the control horns with the stabs loose. Then loosen the grub screw on the quick connect of the elevator servo so that you have the freedom to move the push rods forward and align the stabs with their respective slots. You simply slide those all the way into the slots, and you'll use 2 screws from the center of the fuselage and the bottom to secure them in place. One quick tip when it comes to installing the main gear, here we have our spare wing. The idea is that you take your landing gear, put the tab in the hole, and then you press and it essentially locks into that bracket. Well, the problem with both the one that we crashed as well as the new one is they kept popping out of that after they clicked into place. And the reason for that is the angle of this. It was actually this way. We put this in a vise and bent it more in so that when you put it in the tab, this is sitting flush instead of up. And so now when we put our hand flat so we don't scratch the wing up, and we put the gear into the tab, you have to press relatively hard. They snap into place and they don't pop out of there now. It's not something that you may have to do with yours, but we had to do it with 2 of them, so we just thought we'd mention that. At this point, the only thing left to do really is program your transmitter, plug everything into your receiver of choice, and get that installed. There's really only one place that makes sense to put it, and that is just forward of the battery tray. That's a nice flat area that is level to the airframe, so if you're using a stabilized receiver, it'll work for that as well. The Twinliner has a 39.8-inch wingspan. It's 39 inches long. Our example weighs 2 pounds, ready to fly with a 2200 4-cell pack. It has 2 40mm 12-blade EDF units, 2 5000 kV motors, and 2 20-amp ESCs. It has 2 9-gram servos and 2 4.3-gram servos, and is intended for use with 4S 1300 to 2600 packs. The Twinliner is a park flyer sized and weight airplane. Obviously, it's going to be right at home at a sanctioned flying field. When it comes to flying it at parks and schoolyards, you can certainly do that, but being an EDF, it's pretty quick, so you're going to need a pretty large area to be able to do that. It is sold as a plug and play, which means you choose the radio protocol and install your receiver of choice yourself. Any 2.4 protocol is just fine, so long as it's a full range receiver given the speed of the model. It comes out of the box as a 4-channel. You have elevator, rudder with a steerable nose wheel, ailerons, and verb throttle. It is a convenient top loader, which makes getting the batteries in and out super quick and easy. And a very cool feature is it comes in 2 different paint schemes. They call them red and white. This is the red version. So on both versions, this base white coat is not unpainted foam. That is actual white paint. On the red version, in addition, they paint the leading edges of the nacelles and the horizontals silver. Everything else you see on the airplane is pre-applied decals. On the white version, you do get the painted white base coat, but they don't paint the nacelles or the leading edge of the horizontals for you. It comes with the decals, but they're not applied. You can use aspects of the decals, get with somebody like Cali Graphics, and do your Twinliner up in whatever airline you'd like to do it up in. And finally, it does have a plastic nose cone, so for those of you that like to store your planes leaning up against a wall on the nose, you can do it with this one without doinking it. When it comes to setup, the manual has the usual pertinent information within to get you started. Things like suggestions for CG, pushrod placement, and control throw. You can fly the airplane, and once you see what it does, fine-tune all that to your preferences. Of course, you're going to want to make sure that all the control surfaces are centered before your maiden, and XFly makes that pretty easy for you. The nose wheel, rudder, and elevator halves are all on quick connects, and the ailerons have pinch and expand style push rods similar to an Ultra Micro, but with thicker, stronger push rod material. The manual does tell you about some marks on the back of the fuse that you line your elevators up with at center. You definitely want to do that. If you don't, this thing's going to be climbing like a homesick angel on your first flight. So make sure that you do that when you're centering all your control surfaces. So before we talk about the batteries that we used, the crash of our first one, here it is, and what happened will be pretty obvious. So yeah, when your battery makes an in-flight departure, you're kind of done. And it was totally my fault. I got a hold of some subpar Velcro, that is to say Velcro that is not nice and plush like name brand Velcro or even the Velcro that came with the Twinliner. I had it on a couple of batteries, and one of those packs is the one that I used in the first jet. I didn't seat it very well, and even if I had, it doesn't grab as good as this stuff. And you saw what happened. So I was annoyed with myself for crashing an airplane that Banana Hobby sent us. So I overcompensated and actually fashioned a battery tray with a strap out of light ply and added that to the second jet when it came in. That adds about 3/4 of an ounce. And to be honest, I don't think you have to do that. These are the wings to our first Twinliner. This is a battery that has good Velcro on it. And when you seat that into place, it's not going anywhere. I think that you could absolutely maneuver to the extent of this airplane's negative G capabilities right to the outer limits, and it's not going to come off if you just simply have good Velcro on it. Now, when it comes to the battery bay itself, you are limited in battery length, to be quite honest. These batteries that we use, these are 2200 G2 30C Spectrum Packs 4 cells. They are 4 1/4 inches long, and they fit. These 100C 22s and this 60C 2600 from HRB, they are 4 3/4 inches long, and they don't fit, and you can't really wallow out that battery bay to make it longer because there are plastic brackets on either end of it. And that is the reinforcement that you actually bolt the wings to. So you don't want to be grinding on that. So you just need to know 4 1/4 inches is your target for battery length in that battery bay. We flew the airplane on an AR630. We flew it with and without AS3X. We'll talk about that in our final thoughts. We're going to show you our setup page next, including our AS3X settings. You can pause that, check it out. If you want to set your plane up the way we did, you can. Worth noting, it's the OG AS3X, not AS3X Plus in this particular airplane. So check out the setup page, check out the flying, and we'll see you back here and give you our final thoughts. You may have noticed the 65% expo on the rudder on our setup page. That is to calm down the nose wheel steering. There's a tremendous amount of throw. This thing will turn on a dime, and that just calms that down a bit while allowing you to have full deflection on the actual rudder. Here we're going to do a bit of a slow pass, and then we'll turn it around and do a wide open throttle pass. The Twinliner has plenty of climb rate, speed, and maneuverability, far more than I expected from a model airliner. This is the maneuver that got me in trouble with the first one. That battery ain't going nowhere now. Somebody actually asked us to show a snap roll with this thing. We're even going to do an outside snap roll. Check this out. I don't know why I'm surprised. I mean, it is a model, but it's also an airliner. Pretty cool. When you're not flying your airliner around like a sport jet doing aerobatics, touch and goes are an awful lot of fun as well. And if that's all you're doing, you get a really long flight time doing them. When we were first flying our Twinliner for the initial setup without stabilization, it flew fine, but to be quite honest, once we tuned the AS3X to the airframe, it was more stable, it just flew better. And in many cases, that's scale, because quite a few modern day airliners are fly-by-wire. See folks, this is how you log a bunch of landings in one landing. This is going to be a 1G stall. And if you hold it in, the right wing will start to go, and finally it will completely let go. You neutralize the controls, and it flies right out of it. That was an accelerated stall. That's what happens when you hold full back elevator on a quick takeoff. That's not necessary. On the next one, we're going to do it right, and the thrust angle, given the placement of the nacelles, actually lifts the nose and takes the airplane off for you. You don't have to do anything except throttle up and watch it go. So, full disclosure, the reason that we've never had an airliner in our hangar is because it's not really a genre that I thought I'd be very interested in or that would be much fun to fly. Then recently I got to fly my buddy Dustin's larger foam airliner. I had a good time with that. And then XFly sent us this, and I've really had a good time flying this airplane. If you want to fly it like a sport jet, it flies a lot like a sport jet. Obviously, it's not quite as fast, and it's not as maneuverable, but it is very aerobatic considering what it is. I was surprised by that. And the duration is really good. XFly promises 5 to 10 minutes. That's exactly what we got. We got 5 minutes goofing off and doing aerobatics with it and kind of horsing around with mixed throttle. And then when we took off with just the purpose of using enough power to get around the pattern and just shoot touch and goes, which is a blast with this thing, we could do that for 10 minutes easily. I think I did it for like 12 one time. I just barely enough power to get it around, but very long flight times for an EDF. Either way, whether you're dogging it or you're taking it easy, the flight time for an EDF is really, really good. So when it comes to the performance aspects of the airplane, I think XFly hit the marks they intended to hit, and I think it does exactly what they claim that it does. So very pleased with that. When it comes to skill level, if you're somebody that's flown EDFs before, you're not going to have a problem with this. Very easy EDF to fly. If you're somebody that is experienced with other airplanes and you just want to get into EDFs and you want an airliner, you're not going to have a problem with that. If you're a beginner that's coming off a trainer and you want your second airplane to be a jet, depending upon who you are and how well you've mastered your trainer, this may or may not be the right first EDF for you. If you're really confident, maybe so. If not, there are probably better first EDFs than this. The tendency that the airplane has, given the thrust line, at low speed and high power to lift the nose, you saw what it kind of lifts off on its own when you want to do a short field. If you just give it the beans and hold what you have, off it goes. You'll also notice that if you get really slow and then give it all the beans flying. But what's interesting is once you get it on step and you're at 60-70% throttle cruising around, you give it full power, you won't notice. That really only happens when you're going fast, or I'm sorry, when you're going slow. Now, one of the interesting things that I really like about this airplane is because of that tendency, You have to be careful blipping the throttle when you're landing because it will absolutely raise the nose. It's not like it just normally extends your glide with other airplanes. It will raise the nose a bit. So you have to kind of be ready for that. So you have two choices. You can either shoot a controlled approach at a consistent, very low throttle setting and just hold it there until you get wheels down. You can do what I did and just cut the power altogether and just land it power off. Airplane glides very good. It's very light, a lot of wing area. It does that well. So for somebody versed with EDFs, it's very easy to land well, but it takes some concentration to land perfect. And I actually kind of like that. That makes shooting touch and goes with this thing a lot more fun because there's a little bit of a challenge to it. And I think that's cool. When it comes to price point, I think $180 for what this is a very fair price. It's meant to be simple. They're able to sell it for that because it's simple. There's not a ton of bells and whistles. That keeps it light, makes it fly good, and I think that's a fair price point. So we will put a link in the description if you would like to add a Twinliner to your hangar. If you like airliners, in my opinion, this is kind of a must-have. It's small enough to store and transport together, but big enough to fly pretty doggone good. So get yourself one if you're into airliners. That's it for us. Take care of yourselves. Happy flying. We'll see you next week with something cool with wings.